here in the front seat, and my son over here on the video. I appreciate all the advanced notice that was sent, and this most recent one here talks about the Wegeman family and the birth of Nordic combined in Steamboat Springs. That's a large order. The birth of Nordic combined, the very start. I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to touch on a number of things. An event in Salt Lake City that we feel is the actual seed kernel that was planted that started this whole Nordic stuff off. And I'll talk more about that. I'll talk more about the music that was playing. It's a record that my brother and I, two brothers and I, recorded, and my wife was the instrumental and vocal director on that. We did that in 1959 in preparation for the '60 Olympics. And it sold reasonably well, but then the recording company, Rainote Company, went defunct. And that record is still available, believe it or not, if you go on the web. And you search out these companies on the web that have these old albums, and they'll charge you $5, $10, $15 for it. I don't know where they got them, actually. But anyway, that music we'll talk a little bit more about later. The flag that you see to your left is given to me by the Colorado Springs United States Olympic Committee because I attend and support a lot of the functions down there in Colorado Springs. And I get clothing and Olympic items and got this flag, and I'm very proud of it. I use it at various places when I speak or when I have the occasion to do so. The ski that you see to your right was given to me in 1952 in Oslo, Norway, because I came across to go to the Olympics without any jumping skis and without any cross-country skis, as most of us did. They wanted to outfit us over there. And the thing that's so special to me about that ski is at the very tip, it's signed by Bergerud. And for you people that are not familiar, Bergerud was the Olympic champion in ski jumping from Norway from many years, way back in the 30s. He was Mr. Ski Jumper from Norway. And he picked that ski out for me, and I'm very proud of it. And there's one item here in this museum, and the other ski is at the Colorado Ski Hall of Fame Museum in Vail, Colorado. Now, let's touch on this a little bit. The Wegeman family coming here, we came in June of 1944. And we had lived in Denver all of our lives, and that was a hustling, bustling community, lots of busyness. And when we came here to see this community, it didn't take us long to adjust because of the love, the opportunities, the people, and of course, the surroundings. It didn't take us long to get to adjust. I have prepared some notes, and instead of the Wegeman family and the birth of Nordic combined skiing and Steamboat, I've chosen to, oh, by the way, if you have cell phones, I would appreciate having them off, please. I have chosen to title this speech, this little dissertation, Planting the Seeds of Alpine and Nordic Skiing in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. That also I felt is a tall order because what I'm talking about is seeds. And I looked up the Webster definition of seeds. And it says that from which anything springs, as teaching from which better conditions should develop. Now I want to ask, in relationship to 1944 and today, have better conditions developed in Nordic skiing? Oh,
yes, they sure have.
boy, it is absolutely amazing. We'll touch a little bit on that. But planting the seeds, it's like, I taught physical education activities all of my life. I was a school teacher, and it's like taking a Bob Mathias and making him a Bob Mathias without any foundation. and no elementary skills that he learned years prior. Without those foundation years, he'd be nothing. The same thing goes with any activity in sports. So what I'm talking about is that seed, those seed kernels that were planted, and they started to be planted in 44 when my dad came. It's not known too much that statement is true, but I'm going to back it up in just a few minutes. I made an outline, so you can kind of mentally follow the outline in 4 parts. The first one is early beginnings. Second one is the public school program and the hiring of Al Wegeman, my father. That's 2. 3 is the follow-up on that, which is learning, growing, practicing, competing for fun and success. And the 2 go together, my friends. Fun and success, and we had lots of both. Then the last is, we'll touch a little bit on Steamboat Today. And then when I close, I'm going to mention a little bit about aging and health, longevity, and this record in closing. Had we been across the street, I would have started this by saying, "Welcome to our home." In that little room, that was the living room of where we lived, the Utterback house. We lived there, and in that very room was a large grand piano. And we'd gather around that upright piano in the living room and have sing-alongs while my mother accompanied us. There were also many practice sessions as my mother and sister would rehearse, because we were very involved in the school music programs and also the church music in this very church. Before it was this building, when it was the old white one with the tower. I'm going to kind of center my remarks on, the emphasis would be 3 things. Number 1, Steamboat Springs 44 to 52. That's 1944, friends. 1944. Number 2, the early beginnings of skiing. The early beginnings of skiing in Steamboat, and specifically competition in alpine, 4-way, and cross country. Notice I didn't say competition in jumping, because competition in jumping had been going a long time before this. I'll come to that in just a minute. Number 3, the contributions made by my father, Al Wegeman, as an early pioneer in Steamboat. Little recognized, and still little recognized today. Now, when I start mentioning names, the names of other people important to skiing are legion. But I'm not going to list them all. It would be improper for me to do so, because that's not the purpose of this particular meeting today. Take a look around. Use your imagination. It's 1944. You're driving in off of Robert's Pass. Imagine this. The first thing you see when you enter town heading west is a swimming pool. Big, beautiful expanse, rock edges, a diving tower on one end with a building in back of it. As you are entering, look up to the right to the big mountain that frames the town. That's Storm Mountain. It's barren, it's untouched, undeveloped. To develop it was my father's dream, which was never realized by him. As you travel down Main Street, small independent-owned businesses line the blocks of this quiet little city of about 3,000 inhabitants. And to the left, across the river and across the railroad tracks, is a hill. That's Halsen Hill. It looks like a swatch of pine trees have been cut in its side. There are no buildings, no other development at its base. It is very close to town, walking distance. The population in the whole valley is about 5,000 to 6,000 people. This brings me to the planting of the very early seeds in ski jumping. We can't go very far without mentioning the man that did this. That was Carl Halsen. He was a ski jumper. First, he got his fame as a ski jumper in circuses. So he had to be an athlete and an acrobat, gymnast, a circus performer who came to Steamboat, and he wowed the community with his feats of daring, just like he did in the circus. Can you imagine 44, or way back when he came, he would actually wow the people. The people became enamored with the idea of sliding down a hill with wooden slats on their feet and frolicking in the snow. Some even began doing what Carl Halsen was doing because it was a challenge and a real thrill. They began to jump. Thus, ski jumping was born in Steamboat Springs. Much more has been known and discussed about this early era. It was an important time. I make note of it here because it was the planting of the seeds of ski jumping. Then on to the public school program. The city wanted a Learn to Ski program in the public schools, which was tied to physical education, giving the students class credit. Interesting and new concept, 44. The last class of the day, the students would exit the school building, walk over to the ski hill, take classes to learn to ski. The city fathers hired Al Wegeman in the summer of 1944. It was the start of alpine competitive skiing in Colorado Springs, in Steamboat Springs, because he taught all of that. Al who?
Wegeman.
Al who? Why was he hired? He had been a ski jumper in Wisconsin. They even called him Bird Wegeman. Back then, in those days, in that part of the country, if some of you traveled there, you'll remember seeing a little hill and then a wooden structure on top of that hill. That was the in-run, the takeoff. None of those exist anymore. They've torn all those things down. Legal problems exist there. He was a well-trained teacher of ski technique. Now we're getting someplace where the people really who were making the decision, this was important. He was well-trained in the Austrian method developed by Hans Schneider. He took classes from Otto Schneebs, who was a protege of Hans Schneider. Dad was certified as a ski instructor from the National Ski Association of America. He taught skiing all around the Denver area. At Genesee Mountain, that's where I learned to ski at age 3, at the foot of the ski jump there. Loveland Pass, Berthoud Pass, Winter Park. And here's an interesting place where he taught skiing. At the Denver City Park, on a hill just west of the Museum of Natural History. Can you picture that? Any of you know Denver? And hills in the Welby area. When there was enough snow, he would teach skiing. Now, folks, what you have to remember here is how did they get from the bottom of that little hill to the top, which wasn't far away? Climb, climb, climb. That was my early days of skiing. Climb, climb, pack, sidestep, ski down, take a turn, get hit in the rear with a ski pole because I didn't perform it properly. My dad was a demanding taskmaster. He taught private lessons too in that area. I remember one time he talked to a 70-year-old couple, and I thought, as a youngster, oh, goodness sake, what are these guys doing? Now I'm 86 and still skiing. So I said, well, not a bad idea. But Dad was pretty proud of he taught these folks to ski and ski safely. A husband and wife at 70 years old, and when we left Denver, they were still skiing. I don't know what the age was, but they enjoyed it for a number of years. He taught groups from Colorado Women's College. He taught city firemen, soldiers, scouts, and many friends and family members. But all of his teaching was climb, climb, pack, climb, climb, turn, take your turn, climb, go back up, climb, climb, pack, sidestep. That's the seed planting, my friends. That's the early days. He taught pre-ski conditioning classes at the YMCA in downtown Denver. Well attended because people really got bugged about skiing and they wanted to be in shape before they went up. He worked for the City of Denver Parks and Recreation Department as a summer activities director. He was a Boy Scout troop leader. And here's a biggie. He owned lots of ski rental equipment and he provided skis, boots, and poles for those that needed it. And I also provided a tech and somebody that outfitted people, which was my sister and me. So that was an important adjunct here because back then ski equipment wasn't that expensive, but it wasn't also that available. And he had all this rental equipment. And so they hired Al Wegeman. And we moved to Steamboat. 44 to 47. It was a seminal time for all skiing in Steamboat. Another kind of a brash statement. Seminal time for all skiing. The seeds that would be planted would germinate very quickly. Why do I say this? I've determined that there are 7 reasons why I think that statement is true and valid. Number 1 reason. Prior to this, there was no public school learn to ski program in Steamboat Springs. None. So he was not passed a baton. He started it. Number 2, a new ski program sanctioned by the city and the schools conducted at Halsen Hill each day during the last class period, giving physical education credit for all students was planned. Number 2, it was actually planned and talked about, and they were searching for the right instructor. Number 3 reason I say this, an experienced ski instructor, Al Wegeman, was hired, who was well versed in skiing technique, stopping, turning, safety precautions, equipment, and who was able to, here's the biggie, who was able to impart the love and joy of the sport and the carryover values that it provided of practicing, discipline to do it, dedication to the job, sticking to the task until completion, and all the while having fun. He never left the fun out. He was good with young people. 4th reason I say this, the right facility. Halsen Hill was available. It was within walking distance of the schools and lighted for evening classes. What a great facility. Reason number 5, ski equipment was made readily available at a reasonable price for purchase or rent. What good was it if there was no equipment for them to use? Number 6, the support of the people in the community who were willing to give of their time, talent, and money. Friends, that hasn't ended. That hasn't ended, and that's the beautiful thing about this community. It still supports for the benefit of those kids. Number 7, last one on my list. The Southern Rocky Mountain Ski Association, we call it the SRMSA, Southern Rocky Mountain Ski Association, who was very active in planning, scheduling, organizing, and staffing competitive events. It wouldn't have been any good had we not had any place to compete. So 7 reasons that this was a seminal time in skiing in Steamboat Springs. It's a fact. It all can be verified. This was the initial seed planting which provided opportunities and the proper climate for a growth curve that is still climbing today. Absolutely mind-boggling to me. The next phase, which will be number 3 on my outline, learning, growing, competing, practicing, discipline for fun and success. And so we all learned, practiced, and competed. We had fun and certainly our share of successes. Dad taught all the school classes and also night classes for the townspeople. During the summer, he managed the swimming pool and helped with cutting down the timbers in the summer for the downhill course on Emerald Mountain. He was actually up there doing that. We would pack our own trails and slalom courses. We would pack everything. We would pack and prepare our own jumping hills. Do kids do that today? Not too much. Not too much. I think they're spoiled.
They do.
I really think they need to do a little bit more. But on the other hand, if they spent their time there, there are so many other places where they can really excel in their physical conditioning, mental attitude, and their skill level in whatever they choose to do. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off, and we've chosen to let them have the easy way right now. I hope they get their training for the discipline and dedication in other ways. We would climb and sidestep on the skis back to the top for more runs or jumps. We did have the old boat tow, but it didn't go very far up the hill. We were all thrilled when the new ski lift to the top of Emerald Mountain was completed. Occasionally, Dad would take us up on Rabbit Ears Pass early in the season to conduct classes. Again, more sidestepping and climbing. Only difference is the snow was deeper up there. Once in a while, we would make the trek to Storm Mountain from Rabbit Ears Pass, to ski down Storm Mountain and be picked up at Fish Creek Falls. At our age and back then, that was a pretty brave and risky undertaking, don't you think? Sure. Yeah. We did get topo maps from our game warden, which helped us out, and we found our way. We'd turn our skis over when we got to the top of Stormy and listen to the noon whistle. Have lunch and then ski down. And the ski down was timber bashing through trees and through aspen, and it was great fun. I remember once on one of those trips that Crosby Perry Smith got out of control and took into a little stand of aspen. The aspen weren't very big, 2 or 3 inches big, but he straddled one and ended up straddling his leg, and then it popped and went right back. Those were fun times. During the summer months, we would do lots of swimming, hiking, fishing to stay in shape and have fun. These were great growing up years without most of the temptations that lure young people today. And we were and are grateful for those periods of time. Now let's look at the record book of all this. All this practicing and teaching and training. My dad was chosen to coach the Colorado State High School ski team, which won the meet at Sun Valley in 1947. So that's one of the first big accomplishments there. 2 of the team members were from Steamboat, Marvin Crawford and Keith Wegeman, both of which won a great share of the honors in this particular meet. Dad had a significant early impact on the training and skiing abilities of the following high-level international competitors, 11 in number. Paul Wegeman, Keith Wegeman, Katie Rodoff, who all skied for Steamboat representing the USA in the 1950 FIS Ski Championships at Aspen and Lake Placid. The first 3 in 50. These were the first successes resulting from this city school ski program. Nobody else can take that credit. Then in 52, all skiing for Steamboat representing the USA in the Winter Olympics at Oslo, Norway, were Paul and Keith Wegeman, Katie Rodoff, and Skeeter Werner. Another one Skeeter added to this group. Then in 1954, the FIS Ski Championships at Falun, Sweden. Keith Wegeman represented Steamboat. In 1956 Winter Olympic Games at Cortina, Italy, Katie Rodoff, Marvin Crawford, Buddy and Skeeter Werner, and Corky Hyde all represented Steamboat. All of these kids were a part of that early skiing program in 44, 45, 46. That's what you got to remember. The foundation, the skill level, the determination, the love of the sport. In the 60 Olympic Winter Games, Buddy Werner, John Elliott, and Ray Hyde. In the 64 Winter Games, Buddy Werner and Loris Werner. In the 68 Winter Olympic Games, Loris Werner and Jerry Elliott. Remember, I said significant early impact. I didn't say coaching and training on the day of competition or just prior. I said significant early impact. Early fundamental skill sets. Love of the sport. Attitudes and work ethic were started. The record will also show that this early training impacted many, many more people who were not Olympians. That to me is exciting. But we're not in the business of developing Olympians. We're in the business of developing good human people, good human beings. Now these people had increased skill level and pure joy of the participation in the sport that led them to love skiing and continue to do so. And some still do it today. That's exciting, to have an activity where people can still do it and still love to do it. Then there were competitions. We had lots of competitions throughout the state and throughout the area. In downhill, slalom, and jumping. We were competing all the time in these three events, but not cross country and not four-way skiing. Until the four-way ski meet at Salt Lake City, Utah, February 1946. Salt Lake Ski Club we're going to have a ski meet, but it was four-way, where you do downhill, slalom, jumping, and cross country. The participation by Steamboat skiers in this meet could possibly be the event that inaugurated Nordic skiing in Steamboat. This is why I say this. I got this from the archives. Any of you interested can do this. This is Steamboat Springs ski artists make good showing in Aspen and Salt Lake City tournaments. So we had two different groups, a group that went to Aspen and a group that went to Salt Lake. In the Salt Lake group, we were the group that were the ones that could run cross country and ski, or hopefully could do that. But we had all four events, and Crosby was the oldest at the time, Crosby Perry Smith. I next oldest, then my brother Keith, and Marvin, and then Buddy Werner. So there were 5 of us that went on that trip. Buddy was 9 years old. Wow. And we entered this meet. We won lots of hardware. We brought home lots of hardware. But I have to tell you about the early seed of cross country. The way we ran cross country back in those days, as you remember, this is 46. Our skis were wooden. Our boots were leather, lace up. Our bindings had springs around the heels. The only thing that kept our heels down was a side attachment on the side of the skis, screwed in the side, and that cable would go through that attachment so that your heel wouldn't lift up. That's fine for slalom and downhill, but not for cross country, because on the long stride you need that left heel, that back heel, to come up off the ski. So what do? We detached the side hitches on our downhill and slalom skis, and we ran cross country on them. That's the way we ran cross country back in those days. This is 46, friends. Up to that time, we had never been in a cross country meet. There had been nobody in Steamboat that had ever been in a cross country meet up to that time. There were none. This was the first one, and this is a 4-way meet. where we had to do all four. And here's a funny thing that happened. We all had downhill slalom skis, but Crosby somehow didn't want to use, or they were too stiff. I don't even remember what the reason was, but he didn't have his cross-country skis, so he borrowed Buddy's skis. 9-year-old Buddy Werner had little wooden skis that were about this long, about 3 feet long, and he detached the side hitch. He moved the bindings a little so his big foot could get in, and he ran the cross-country. And you know how skis normally have an arc to them? Well, when he got back home after running this 3 to 5 mile cross-country race, it was sloppy and wet, so this wooden ski got soaked, and also it got changed in its formation, and it looked like a barrel stave. So that was the finish of his cross-country race, looking like a barrel stave. Very interesting start of our cross-country. Now, the thing that has kept cross-country going all those subsequent years is the college competitions that occur here and have occurred across the whole United States. Because back in those days, it was all four-way. It was downhill, slalom, jumping, and cross-country. And you, as a competitor in college, would either do 2 of those events, or the other 2 events, or all 4. And my brother and I always did all 4. Marvin Crawford was another all four-way skier. Lots of good all 4. Chuck Leckenby was a 4-way skier. There he sits right there in the audience. Skied for CU. He was one of my competitors. Thanks for coming, Chuck. So Chuck remembers some of this stuff well, I'm sure. So that was my dad's really contribution. He was recognized for his contribution from the National Ski Association of America. And I want to read this to you. This was adopted in 1950. The following resolution was unanimously adopted at the 42nd Annual Convention at Sun Valley, 1950. Be it resolved that this convention of the National Ski Association of America now go on record in recognizing the outstanding service to skiing, and particularly to junior skiing, of Mr. Alvin Wegeman of Steamboat Springs, Colorado. His work in these projects has been inspirational and of enduring benefit to all who have come under his influence. His family is a noted one in this sport, and his sons Keith and Paul were members of the 1950 FIS team. To Mr. Wegeman at Fitzsimmons General Hospital in Denver, we extend our deepest sympathies and best wishes. It is the wish of the delegates that this resolution, which goes into our permanent records, be conveyed to Mr. Wegeman's family. Signed by the Executive Secretary. This was the last recognition that my father got, because he passed away in September of 1950. Drawing this particular session to a close, in his short tenure at Steamboat, he accomplished a great deal and touched many lives through skiing, the swimming pool, and his love for young people. He received no baton when he arrived. He received a blank slate, friends. Almost every instructor that's come here since, and I'm not criticizing them, has received a baton. And they've all done beautifully at continuing the progress and passing a baton. But here's one who has had little recognition, and there was no baton. He received no baton when he arrived, but he passed the baton of what he helped to create. The seed was planted and is still flourishing today. This presentation today, I hope, will be a kind of memorial to a true steamboat pioneer who contributed a great deal without compensatory recognition. My father, Al Wegeman. Number 5 in my outline is Steamboat Today. What a remarkable community. We and many others still call it home. I still call it home. It has a certain allure to me. It's a giving, supportive group of people still to this day. Leadership and programs that work are available here. It's a history of successful giving people who were raised here and who gave back or who are still contributing in the communities wherever they live. And here's the real biggie. Steamboat Today. The unparalleled result and accomplishment of 84 Olympians to date from Steamboat Springs. It's a real honor for me to be about number 4, 3 or 4 in that list. This was all brought about by the early plantings, the seeds of dedicated steamboat pioneers. So here I end my presentation of steamboat and skiing and Nordic. And now just a few words about anti-aging health. When I was in college in 1949 at University of Denver, an undergraduate professor of mine told me 2 things that I have never forgotten. One was that as we age, we tend to pick up weight. So he suggested that as you age, continue to lose, so that as you get toward the end of your life, you're slim. I've never forgotten that, and I've never varied from that. I'm getting toward the end, and today I weigh exactly what I weighed when I represented Steamboat in the Golden Gloves Western Slopes Boxing Championships at Craig in the light heavyweight division. I won that in 47 at 173. Today I weigh 173.
Wow.
And it hasn't been easy, but it's one of the things that he recommended. The other thing that he recommended is keep in mind in front of you a triangle, equilateral, all sides the same, with no touching of the ends, the points. The reason for that, there's flexibility there. And at the bottom, your sufficient amount of exercise. On one side, your sufficient amount of good food. On the other side, your sufficient amount of good rest. Food, rest, and exercise in balance. I've never forgotten that. It's paid off. It's paid off big time. I want to read a couple things for you about this by Dr. Henry Lodge. He says, most aging is just dry rot we program into our cells by sedentary living, junk food, and stress. That's a mouthful. Only I've never heard of it referred to as dry rot. But it is a kind of an inflammatory rot, isn't it? Sedentary living, junk food, and stress. It's hard for me to preach sedentary living here because this is an active community. Most everybody is slim and active here. Then he goes on to say, this doctor says, when you don't exercise, your muscles let out a steady trickle of chemicals that tell every cell to decay day after day after day. So you're sending the wrong message by not exercising. Somebody asked me not too long ago, I think it was at our first interview, what I attribute my living as long as I have so far. And I said, if I had to talk about one thing and one thing only, I think it would be a sufficient amount of exercise. And it'd be the one thing that most people short on, because the food and rest part, we get those in abundance, most of us. But it's exercise. I want to read, in closing this, what Will Rogers says about growing older. Eventually you will reach a point when you stop lying about your age and start bragging about it. The second, he says, the older we get, the fewer things seem worth waiting in line for. Third, some people try to turn back their odometers. Not me, I want people to know why I look this way. I've traveled a long way and some of the roads weren't paved. I feel that one. Fourth, when you are dissatisfied and would like to go back to youth, think of algebra. Fifth, you know you're getting old when everything either dries up or leaks. Sixth, I don't know how I got over the hill without ever getting to the top. Seventh, one of the many things no one tells you about aging is that it is such a nice change from being young. That's a good one. Eight, we must wait until evening to see how splendid the day has been when you get older. Ninth, being young is beautiful, but being old is comfortable. That's true. 10th, long ago when men cursed and beat the ground with sticks, it was called witchcraft. Today it's called golf. And finally, if you don't learn to laugh at trouble, you won't have anything to laugh at when you're old. Then I leave you with a fellow by the name of Jackson Brown Jr. has 21 suggestions for living wisely and well. I'd just like to read them quickly. Teach by example, 1. Do a generous act each day. Never waste an opportunity to tell anybody, to tell someone that you love them. Do something every day that maintains your good health. Take family vacations whether you can afford it or not. Stand up for your principles even if you stand alone. That's a tough one. Judge your success by the degree that you're enjoying peace, health, and love. Be there when people need you. Be devoted to your spouse and dedicated to your children. Oh, that's one needed today. Be of service to your community and to your country. Have courage when things go wrong. Tell the truth. Maintain a grateful heart. Gratitude. Manage your resources wisely. Don't overlook life's small joys while searching for the big ones. Discover the power of prayer. Discover the power of forgiveness. Love people more than things. Look for the good, search for the truth, and hope for the best. And there I conclude my remarks, only to want to mention something about that crazy album. In '60, as I said, we tried to sell this album, and we made it, and it's not available unless you go on the web. But it was fun making it. It was a lot of hard work, and we thought it might be kind of a lucrative endeavor. It ended up being that between the 3 or 4 of us that were involved, my wife and the 3 boys, that we would have made about 50 cents an hour on the total project. So we can look at it and say, 50 cents an hour, that's, well, anyway, it was fun. And the music isn't bad either. It's fun to listen to when you take your boots off and you got a fire going and you're going to have your mint julep and sit down and just enjoy the evening. That's about when it's at its best. But anyway, with that, I open it to any questions, or if people have to leave. I want to thank you all for coming. It's been a real joy. Do you have anything? If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to try. Yes?
What do you do to keep in shape now?
I have up until recently been running. I still run, or I did. Now I'm walking. I have a couple of challenges. 2 of them are knees, and with
Elbows, shoulders,
yes,
neck, hips.
a few challenges. And talking about challenges, just some of the challenges I have faced is I've had a broken neck, and I'm still here and still living and not in a wheelchair. And 2 open heart surgeries, a lot of broken bones, my share of illnesses, but onward and upward, the miracles of modern medicine. And the other thing is I ride a mountain bike and ski. I do lots of mountain biking and lots of skiing when I can. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Where are the other kids?
Good question. I was the oldest of 4. My sister, the next in line, is still living in Colorado Springs. She was a nurse, and she skied for Steamboat. The next one, Keith, in the white jacket, he was also an Olympian with me, passed away about
1974.
74, passed away of cancer. So at that particular time, 50% of my immediate family died of cancer. Mother, Dad, and Keith. Then about 2 or 3 years ago, the one in red, the baby who was the singer, he has made several records. He passed away, had some heart complications, I believe. So they're all gone but me, except in my sister. As a matter of fact, I'm getting to the point where there are not many left, the people that I grew up with and knew and loved. So we're continually making new friends. Any other questions?
Yeah, were the Scandinavians using exactly the same type of ski over there for their cross-country, or?
Well, this was a jumping ski. We were also supplied by a Splitkin cross-country ski, and they were using the same ski, yeah. which has no similarity to the skis for today. The equipment for today in all of skiing has just increased and gone ahead, and the techniques are just so much different. It's advanced so far. It's no wonder these kids do what they do today. Any more?
You know, you talk about the kids being spoiled these days, and I kind of get that, because I've gone out and boot packed mountains myself, and I like to just hop on the lift. But I was reading in Carl Halsen's book that they used to just ski like to Summit County for a competition. And when you were living here, did you guys use your skis to get around during the winter?
Around town, yes. We would actually loosen that cable and go across the tracks and to get to the ski hill. But at that particular time, there was no objective other than to get to where we wanted to practice. And so there was no racing and no competition involved. But we did that. Yes, sir.
Back when you had to lug your skis back up the hill, how many runs could you get a day? And if your answer was less than 10, how did you get good at it?
It was less than 10. And I have two answers. One, we never got that good. I mean, we got as good as we could get in that day. And with those abilities, I would hate to compete today with the kids of today. They're amazing, absolutely amazing what they do. And of course, lots of things have progressed since then. One of the things that's progressed tremendously is conditioning. And that means body conditioning, and it's come a long ways. A lot of science that's behind it now. And also mental conditioning, which goes into it. And then the third thing would be the development of equipment. Fantastic. And then, of course, preparation of ski hills, that's got to go into it too, the way they prepare today. Look at that beautiful thing and those green swatches now. We never had anything like that. Every year there was a change because part of it had washed out in the spring. So they had bulldozers over there and they had to make a new ski jump, which means we had to build a new scaffold and a new ski. So it was new. Every year it was new. The hill was new every year. This thing here is going to be the same through summer and winter. And when they get enough money to plasticize that big one, it's going to be fantastic. What's going to happen? Any more questions? Yes?
You have children and grandchildren. Do they all ski?
Yes.
Do they compete?
No.
Just for fun?
Just for fun. And I don't care. I want them to enjoy life and enjoy what they do, and I've never pushed them. But my son still skis with me. We ski together. And he's very good. He skis really well. Another? Yes?
Paul, you mentioned going to Halsen after school. Where were the schools at the time?
The high school was right next to where the old hospital used to be.
Okay.
The hospital right beside the high school.
At the park?
Then the elementary school was that same grounds next. So that's all it was. So that's that's right close to.
7th and Pine.
Yeah, 7th and Pine. That's right close.
Yeah.
We're just.
So we're the old, okay, got it.
Yep, they were not way out. Really close. And most kids, you'd watch that when the last class came, skis carried, or they would be on their skis walking. Just it's a mass exodus from here going across. Any more questions? Folks, it's been a pleasure, and I thank you for your attendance and your attention. Thank you.